Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Today we're going to discuss a number of news-related events in the headlines that are related to Bible prophecy. So let's dive right in. First we have from Zero Hedge, Israeli jets strike Damascus on heels of Putin's Tehran summit. Israeli fighter jets launched a major attack on and near the Syrian capital of Damascus just after midnight Friday, killing 3 soldiers and wounding 7, which activated the Syrian military's anti-air defenses. While such brazen Israeli assaults on Syria have occurred almost weekly over the last months and even years, many have noticed the timing comes just after Russia's Vladimir Putin was in Iran, where he met with his Iranian and Turkish counterparts. Now that's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. We talked about this in the most recent newsletter that Putin took this trip. It was only his second trip outside of the country since the war in Ukraine began. And he went to Tehran and he met with Iranian and Turkish leaders. Before that, he went to Tajikistan, and in each case, he's met with, between those 2 trips, 5 of the countries that the Bible describes as being in the Gog of Magog alliance in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So here we go again. We have this meeting in Tehran, and then it's followed up with an Israeli strike on Damascus. So you have this Gog of Magog alliance that's forming, and Israel is going to be aligned against it, obviously, as we're already seeing. So it says, in the wake of the attack, one prominent Syria and Middle East analyst said, after the trilateral meeting of Putin, Raisi, and Erdogan in Tehran, I predicted on Wednesday an Israeli aggression on Syria, given that Israel sees any legitimization of the regime in Tehran as a direct challenge and threat to its security interest. So again, we see the formation of this Gog of Magog alliance, and we see Israel perceiving that as a threat. And we've had, in recent months, when Israel has targeted Iranian and Hezbollah assets inside Syria. In the past, where Russia just sort of gave them a pass, never really talked about it, now they're coming out openly and saying, stop doing that. So we're seeing some aggression, some diplomatic parting of the ways between Russia and Israel in recent days. Along those lines, another news article that we've seen is related to the Jewish Agency for Israel in Russia, which Russia is threatening to ban. That's a private organization that's helped immigrate over 200,000 Jews from Russia to Israel since the late 1980s. So that would be seen as a shot over the bow diplomatically. It would be seen as an action that Israel would be offended by and should be. And so we're seeing this aggressive relationship posture coming from Russia toward Israel lately. And along those lines, we finish up this article where it mentions, importantly, Gazprom just reached what's being described as a $40 billion long-term deal with Iran's state oil company. This memorandum of understanding will be the largest foreign investment in the history of Iran's oil industry, as it will lead to an investment of several tens of billions of dollars of Russian investment in Iran's oil and gas fields. So again, we see the strengthening of this Russian and Iranian partnership. We see them often set aside by sanctions by the West against these two countries, and now they're coming into each other's arms. This has been happening for years. It's getting stronger. We're seeing, what did they describe, the largest long-term deal in Iranian state oil history. So Russia is strengthening its ties with Iran, which is just as Ezekiel 38 and 39 describes, that the two of them will be part of an invasion of Israel sometime in the future. So we're keeping our eyes on that. Next, we want to talk about Sri Lanka Energy Minister introduces fuel rationing scheme amid shortage. Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy on Saturday introduced National Fuel Pass, a fuel rationing scheme amid the raging economic crisis and shortage of fuel in the island country. The new pass will guarantee the allocation of fuel quota on a weekly basis, A QR code will be given for each national identity card number once the vehicle identification number and other details are verified. So here we see the aftermath of this crisis in Sri Lanka. They've had a revolution. The president was basically run out of the country because they're out of fuel, they're out of food, the economy has collapsed, the society has collapsed. And as a result of that emergency, they come in and they issue this electronic rationing scheme, which is habituating people to and building the platform for what will one day be the mark of the beast. So just as we saw with, I'll call them the poke passports in Europe and other places around the world, based on what happened over the last 2 years, that gave you entry into certain places and the eligibility to do certain things. We're going to see that starting to happen with food as we move into this new crisis where we have food shortages and famine in various parts of the world. Right now, this is just Sri Lanka, but that's where they're going to take this. Now, how did Sri Lanka get here? There has been years and years of bad decisions by their political leaders that have led to this. But one of the most significant was about a year ago in the spring of 2021 when they banned the import of all chemical, synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. They wanted to go all green and get a high ESG score and impress leaders abroad with their environmental friendliness. And so they got rid of these fertilizers and pesticides, which are necessary to get the crop yields they need to feed the people in Sri Lanka. So as a result of that, they saw rice production dip 20%. Tea, which is one of their primary cash crop exports, that went down 18%. And so now you have, the economy's gone bust. They can't import things. And it's just the society has collapsed and people can't feed themselves. And so, of course, governments love emergencies and they've moved in with this new passport plan. Now, along those lines, that leads us right into this next story, which says Trudeau moves forward with fertilizer reduction climate policy. Hey, why not? Because, it works so well in Sri Lanka. Let's do it in Canada too. So here we have Trudeau pushing forward with the same thing we're seeing in the Netherlands, where they want to reduce the amount of nitrogen that goes into the atmosphere. So let's read on, and we see Justin Trudeau has decided to move forward with his cap on nitrogen emissions by reducing fertilizer use, even as provincial agriculture ministers beg him to stop. We're really concerned with this arbitrary goal, Saskatchewan Minister of Agriculture said. The Trudeau government has apparently moved on from their attack on the oil and gas industry and set their sights on Saskatchewan farmers, and I would say on the citizens of Canada and really of the whole world. This attack on nitrogen is really nonsense when you look at it. The Earth's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. So how much emissions are we seeing from nitrogen from fertilizer? And even if there we're going to starve people to prevent this from happening. It makes no sense. I would like to believe that this is based on ignorance of what's going on, but again, I think that this is intentional. This is an intentional policy because Trudeau knows what the UN has been saying, what world organizations have been saying, what plenty of people have been saying, and that is that the world, as we move into the latter part of this year and into 2023, we're going to see food shortages and we're going to see famine in many parts of the world. And so the world is looking for places like the Netherlands and Canada and the United States to increase production to help feed the rest of the world. And the response to that is, let's curtail our production. It makes no sense unless it's intentional. Now, why would it be intentional? Well, when you have a crisis and you have a food shortage, then you get to introduce this, right? You get to introduce your electronic rationing scheme. And then you get to control people, right? I can't see that there's any other way around why these types of policies would be implemented, especially at this time. It's It's ridiculous. You have to laugh at it because it's just so absurd. Then we move on to this next story. It's from NBC News. It says mortgage boycott in China leads the government to step in. Banks in China are being instructed to help the country's beleaguered property developers fund some real estate projects amid a widening boycott by home buyers who refuse to pay mortgages on unfinished houses. The China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission told the official industry newspaper on Sunday that banks should meet developers' financing needs where reasonable. The commission expressed confidence that with concerted efforts, all the difficulties and problems will be properly solved, right? So everything's going to magically get better. So the remarks come as growing number of home buyers across China are threatening to stop making their mortgage payments for stalled property projects, aggravating a real estate crisis that has already hit the economy. And that's the key. If you've been following China, you know that Evergrande, one of the largest property developers in China, defaulted on billions of dollars in debt that they had earlier in the year. There was concern that that would lead to financial contagion throughout the global financial system as counterparties to that debt went bankrupt, and that didn't happen. It was some restructuring of that debt took place. There were some other things that happened, but it definitely weakened that system. And we've also seen bank runs in China recently where people are lined up outside of the bank for days, and they've been told that they can't get their money out. And so this is the power that the people there have, is to say, well, we're going to stop paying our mortgages. They can't protest in the streets because the tanks will come, but they can protest from their own homes by saying, I'm not going to make this payment. And what is the government going to do? Then come and arrest you for not making the payment? Well, you're not going to be able to make those payments from jail either. So this could turn into a very real crisis, a financial crisis in China that spills over into the rest of the world. If more and more homeowners show their protest by not paying their mortgages, then we're going to have a big problem, and that could cascade over into the rest of the world at a time where we see all sorts of massive debt on countries' balance sheets. We see the banking sector over leveraged. We see currencies that are being printed into oblivion, and we're set up for a huge financial crisis. And that crisis, just as these other crises lead to government interventions, if we had a crisis on a massive global scale like that, that sets the table for the eventual rise of the Antichrist. So guys, like this video, comment below. What do you think? Let me know. Share this. It gets out to more people. The more people that like and share this, the more people that see it, the more people that hear the message of Jesus and the Bible and the good news that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, rose from the dead, and he lives today. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.